Greetings, adventurers, and welcome back to the show. It's good to see you, and it's good to be seen by you. What we've got on tap for you this evening is one of my earlier interviews. This is all the way back in 2020 on Facebook, and it is a nice talk between myself and the great Jim Ward. So, come on, put your feet up, relax, and enjoy this interview with one of the pioneers of the role-playing game hobby. There we go. It's auto starting now. Hey everybody out there in internet land, it is I, your humble and handsome host. And speaking of humble and handsome people, today I have a very special guest. I have a man whose career in role-playing games really kind of speaks for itself. Ladies and gentlemen, I bring you the one, the only Jim Ward. Jim, thank you so much for coming on the live cast today. I really appreciate it.
Oh, great introduction. Thank you very much.
Oh, you're quite welcome. You're quite welcome. For the 2 or 3 people who are watching this who perhaps have lived under a rock until this very moment, tell us a little bit about yourself. Who you are and what you do.
Okay, that's fair. I'm James M. Ward. I started in the role-playing biz with Gary Gygax in 1974. I've got lots of games to my credit, AD&D and D&D games, and I did the first science fiction role-playing game in Metamorphosis Alpha in 1976, and I did the first apocalyptic role-playing game in Gamma World in 1978. So I have been doing product ever since. I've come out with hundreds of different things in pretty much all the formats that's possible to come out with stuff.
So wow, a gamer saying I'm going to have the complete Jim Ward collection, they'd pretty much have to build an expansion onto their home, it sounds like, and that's a good thing.
I don't think that's possible to do. Yeah. I have to tell you, I have lots of product out there, and some of it goes for thousands of dollars now.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. So, to quote the songstress herself, let's start at the very beginning. You were there, man. You were like in the delivery room when Dungeons and Dragons was being born. Hell, you were practically there when it was being conceived, but that's a little weird with that analogy, so we'll just move on.
Yeah.
And I think, now I could be wrong, but I think your official mention in a TSR product actually comes in Supplement 1 Greyhawk. And I've told my viewers this story, but I'd like to hear it just so that I know I've got it right. Let me see if I should have bookmarked this, but for those of you who
let me correct you.
Okay.
Actually, my first mention was in the Strategic Review,
Gary's
newsletter.
Yeah, the newsletter.
I had a couple articles in those Strategic Reviews, and then I got mentioned in that. So go ahead.
Okay. Well, thank you for setting the record straight, because I was clearly getting that wrong. But if I am not mistaken, let's see here. I have to put these on. I paint with these, but I also use them as readers more and more nowadays. Old eyes. I got LASIK done about 10 years ago, and I can see like details on the surface of the moon but stuff that's 3 feet away is just lost to me. So,
Yeah.
ladies and gentlemen, we have Meteor Swarm, a blast of 4 fireballs, Jim, thrown in whatever pattern the caster desires, each of 10 to 60 points of damage, or 8 fireballs, Jim, of 1/2 normal diameter and 5 to 30 damage, may likewise be thrown, range 24 inches, which is 240 feet for the uninitiated. So, tell us the story behind Meteor Swarm.
Yeah, okay. So Rob Coons and I got into a huge debate over that spell.
Okay.
I said it was named Meteor Swarm, so it fires meteors.
Okay.
And Rob said, no, it fires fireballs. So we went back and forth for a good month on this spell. Finally, we both went to Gary, and we both said our say on what it should be. And, you know, my point was, why call it Meteor Swarm if it's not meteors? And Rob's point is, everybody knows it's fireballs. And Gary, of course, sided with Rob.
Oh.
So that's how that got done.
So
in my game, the Meteor Swarm fires meteors.
Fires meteors. Okay, so good point to note. Everybody, write that down. If you get to game with Jim and you're using Meteor Swarm, rocks are gonna fall.
Exactly.
So,
exactly right. Yes.
It's not fireballs, it's rocks, because it says Meteor Swarm on it.
That's right. I should say Fireball Swarm if it's going to be fireballs.
Exactly so. I'm with you on that one. But
all right, good.
So, how did you come to be? Because I mean, you're not ancient or anything like that. I mean, you must have been a pretty young feller when you started at TSR with a bunch of relative graybeards. So what was the nexus? What was the point of entry for becoming one of the founders of Dungeons and Dragons?
This is my favorite story to tell. All right, so the time is 1974.
Okay.
I just graduated from college with a teaching degree.
Okay.
And every Tuesday, I went over to the Lake Geneva bookstore, and every Tuesday they would get in science fiction and fantasy books. And so I would go there, and I'd find the new ones and take them home. And so one Tuesday in 1974, I'm going down the book racks, and I have 7 books in my hand. And they're like there's a couple Conan Fritz Leiber books, and there's an Andrea Norton book, there's a couple science fiction books. And right next to me is this, what I assumed was a biker dude. He had a blue jean jacket on, he had ripped blue jeans, he had one of those chain wallets with the chain dangling out of his pocket. He was scruffy looking with a beard and scruffy hair, but he had the exact 7 books in his hand as I had. And so we looked at our books, and we looked at each other, we got to laughing, and we started talking about, what we like to read, and we both like to read the exact same books. And he said he had a game. This was Gary Gygax, by the way. He said he had a game where I could play Conan the Barbarian and fight Set. And I was hooked like a fish.
Oh, I can imagine.
Yeah. A couple weeks later, I went over to his house on his side porch, and he and Brian Bloom taught me how to play. And that was my start with Gary and the group.
Man, what an auspicious start. Bumping into Gary Gygax in a science fiction bookstore, and he's got the exact same books as you. That is...
I know, it's wild.
So it wasn't very long after you went from guy I bumped into at a bookstore to guy that I'm going to create a new product line for you. So I mean, you went from a humorous reference in Greyhawk, some articles in the Strategic Review, straight up to designing your own game. So Tell us about the genesis of Metamorphosis Alpha.
Yeah, okay. I was playing the game with Gary all summer, so it was like 2.5 months.
Sure.
And I loved science fiction. I love science fiction as much as I love fantasy. And I said, Gary, you absolutely have to have a science fiction version of this. And Gary said, Jim, I don't have the time right now to write it. Why don't you try? And I was very surprised because Gary had no idea that I could write. But I wasn't an idiot. So I seized on this and I started working on Metamorphosis Alpha. I wanted it to be like but unlike D&D for copyright reasons, if nothing else. And so it took me, I want to say it took me 4 months to write MA and start playtesting it with Gary and Brian. And they loved it. They loved the game. And for Gary, it was wonderful because Gary's problem was he was always the referee. He was never the player in his games. And he wanted to play. He wanted to be on the other side of that screen. And so he loved playing characters in Metamorphosis Alpha. Nice. We had a great time. For 44 years, we played, and I only killed Gary once in all those 44 years with Metamorphosis Alpha.
Well,
so
it must be...
Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, it must be very difficult to kill a character who has total healing.
Oh, well, no, that's another little story.
I was hoping we would get to that story.
So, I did Metamorphosis Alpha, and I did all the mutations. And Gary told me, after the book was printed, he said, Jim, we really need total healing as a mutation in the game. And I said, no, Gary, I think that's too powerful a thing. And Gary said, well, no, Jim, you're wrong. It's first of all, it's very difficult to argue with Gary Gygax about role playing. But I said, no, you're wrong. And so he said, Jim, my rules will always have total healing as a mutation. And he took his Metamorphosis book and he wrote in the margin total healing and how it worked. I know. And so I always objected. I never let him have it, even though he wanted it. Almost every game session, when he made a new character, he'd ask for total healing. Total healing. And I said, no, it's not in the game. Until finally, after the man passed away, I did a great big mutations book with Goodman Games, an MA mutations book. And just to honor Gary, I put the total healing in the mutations. Yeah. Bravo.
Bravo to you and bravo to Gary. I had heard a lot of stories like that. It kind of goes like Chinese whispers. You end up playing telephone. So I wasn't sure. Sure. I wasn't sure of the exact origin of total healing. So thanks for thanks for clearing that up.
Yeah, no problem. That's why I'm here.
So you I mean, again, to just go back to the volume of your work, I guess to jump back chronologically a little bit, you had mentioned Rob Kuntz. You and Rob, of course, put out the God book for original D&D, Gods, Demigods, and Heroes. So talk a little bit about that. What's the origin there?
Okay, so I was, and again, I was a history and English teacher, and so as I was playing D&D, I realized that while those clerics and they had clerical abilities, they didn't have any god to worship. They didn't have any deity, because all the deities have very interesting themes. Like Odin has this powerful spear, and Zeus has this powerful lightning bolt. And I said to myself, though the clerics need deities to worship and respond to, so that they have a kind of a running theme to their gaming. Thor, if you worship Thor, you got to have a big hammer. Kind of like that. If you do Set, you have to have the snake staff. And so we did Gods, Demigods, and Heroes, and that sold very well.
Mm-hmm.
And so then when AD&D came out, we did Deities and Demigods, and that sold really, really well.
Oh yeah, Deities and Demigods was for, again, the small number of viewers who might not know about it, was and I actually, Jim, I feel remiss. I should have grabbed a copy. I'll just to show our viewers here. I am down to a single careworn copy of Deities and Demigods that was gifted me by a friend. Now we're going to go into the etymology of this a bit more, but this is it right here. Deities and Demigods.
Is it the good one or the bad one?
It is the good one. This is the unexpurgated version. Now,
very good.
For those who might not know 100% about that, and I'm going to also show Gods, Demigods, and Heroes briefly. And I do want to touch on something with regards to Gods, Demigods, and Heroes, because you mentioned, Set and Conan and so forth. You guys, and I don't mean this in a negative way at all, but you guys unabashedly put Elric and Conan and stuff from, the Howard's creation in Gods, Demigods, and Heroes. And
there was no Elric in Gods, Demigods, and Heroes.
Okay, all right. Well, I'm going to admit it has been a long time since I've opened my copy of Gods, Demigods, and Heroes. But Conan's in there. So
Conan is in there. I'd like to point out that we got permission from the Conan estate.
Okay. Well, that was what I was going to ask. Did you guys do that just as a lark, or did you have the auspices of the estate? But you got the estate's permission, so that's pretty
absolutely.
Awesome.
Yeah, absolutely.
So for the sake of our viewers who again may not know this, Deities and Demigods came in a few different flavors, but the two major differences with Deities and Demigods is there is what I call the expurgated and the unexpurgated version. And what I'm holding here is the unexpurgated version. And in this volume are mythos. What's the word, Jim?
I always use pantheons. Actually.
Pantheons, okay. The pantheons from the writings of H.P. Lovecraft and from Michael Moorcock. At the time, Chaosium was publishing two role-playing games. One was set in the Elric sagas, and the other was, and still is, set in H.P. Lovecraft's Cthulhu pantheons. So you guys went to Chaosium and said, "Hey, can we do this? Are you okay with us putting that?" No,
we didn't.
Okay, so
let me tell you this story.
Tell us the story, because I probably have been telling it wrong.
Yeah, this is a sad story, actually, and it pushes one of my anger buttons.
Okay.
Every year on the AD&D lines, some idiot says TSR plagiarized the Elric and the Cthulhu mythos in Deities and Demigods. Couldn't be farther from the truth. Here's what happens.
Okay.
So, I was commissioned to do Deities and Demigods, and I gave Gary an outline of the different pantheons that I wanted to do, and the Cthulhu one and the Elric one were in the outline. And Gary told me, Gary said, "Jim, you might have a little trouble with these two guys, so let's write them and get permission." And for some, I don't know why, but Gary had both addresses for Arkham House for the Cthulhu mythos and for Michael Moorcock in England.
Okay.
So I sent them letters. I told them, this is what we want to do. We want to write about your storylines. We will credit you by naming, you're calling out your books in our volume of Deities and Demigods. Can we have permission to do that? And they both wrote me back letters that unfortunately I gave to TSR, and they're in the Wizards of the Coast archives somewhere, and they gave permission. They said, "Go right ahead." Okay, and then later that same year, both groups, Arkham House and Michael Moorcock, signed licensing contracts with Chaosium for them to do role-playing games.
Okay.
So my letters were first, but they had contracts with them. So we produced our first volume, and it came out huge success all over the world, actually. And then Chaosium sent us a legal cease and desist letter. They said, we have the contract for these. You have to stop. You have to stop selling these. So we would have won. We would have won the court case for sure. But Brian Bloom didn't want to go to California, didn't want to hire a California lawyer, and didn't want to go through the expense of taking it to court. So he just said, we're going to strip those two out. So they stripped them out. Well, I was gigantically upset because
I can imagine.
I had gone to the effort of doing the letters and getting permission. And so I said, Brian, don't do this. He said, no, we're going to do it. And so they stripped it out. And I said to Brian, I will happily, for free, write 2 more Pantheons to add in the book. And Brian says, no, we don't want to bother with it. And I said, Brian, it won't cost you a penny. No, we don't want to do it. So they printed the book without those 2 mythos in them, and then proceeded to sell almost 1 million copies without the 2 mythos in them. So these days, the one with the mythos sells for huge silly bucks. $500, $600. I've seen $1,100 for a pristine one.
Now, go ahead. I'm sorry. No, you go ahead.
It's just so irritating. It's still today, years later. It's so frustrating to me that I wasn't able to fix it and give them some more new material.
Yeah, I can imagine. One of the things, and this, you hit on a very salient point, the ridiculous sums of money that this commands. Jim, this is not a lie. Going back to about 1983, I think, or 84, when my then girlfriend up the block, Wendy Robinson, bought me a copy of Deities and Demigods at the local department store, I have owned 13 copies of Deities and Demigods.
Oh my!
I'm not a hoarder. I don't have them anymore. I sold the bulk of them off to friends who thought, it was as rare as hen's teeth. I made some money, but I certainly didn't sell them for hundreds of dollars or anything like that.
Yeah.
I just have a personal issue with that, but the thing is again, 13 copies. I have found them in used bookshops. I found them online. I got a copy when I got back into AD&D in 1998. Someone sold me a copy for $20 and a paperback novel that I had that they wanted.
Oh wow!
I literally stuck $20 inside this compilation of cyberpunk science fiction and FedExed it to the guy, and a week later I got my unexpurgated Deities and Demigods. The point that I'm making is, it's not that rare. It really isn't. I think some of the people who've, looked over the publicly available data and information, there were like 40 or 50,000 copies of this printed.
No, you want to know a double top secret?
Hit me, double top secret, okay. Just for us and our viewers.
The first printing was 60,000 units.
There you go.
There you go. And they sold out in 2 weeks. That's how good it was.
I can believe it. Now, to get a little granular, I don't want to go too propeller head on the collector stuff, but there was what's called a true first printing, where it's just as is, but there was a second first printing where you guys added a special thank you to Chaosium in the book.
Yeah.
And the management at TSR pulled the Elric and Cthulhu pantheons so quickly that later second printings went out that still had that thank you printed in them, even though the content had been removed and all the other print plates had been changed.
I know.
So that's kind of an unusual bird to find. But again, I've found the equivalent of a case lot of them over the years.
Yeah.
So it makes me laugh. Probably because I have one. If I didn't own one, it would make me angry. But it makes me laugh. Like periodically, I'll just go on eBay and look for, deities and demigods with Cthulhu and Elric. Bam, $175, $275, $300. And the
crazy.
thing, the descriptors that people put in them, like illegal, banned, all printings destroyed, just the sensationalism that grew up around a book that just got a little mired in financial BS. It's amusing to me, but I can understand where it would be frustrating to you.
Yeah, and lucky for me, a lot of my stuff goes for silly bucks.
My
$5 Metamorphosis Alpha book commonly goes for $200 on eBay.
Oh yeah, I just, and this was a number of years ago. I was like, I never got a chance to play Metamorphosis Alpha. I've got a good gaming group. I think I'll spring it on them. I'm going to grab a copy of Metamorphosis Alpha. No, I'm not. Not at that price. Of course,
lucky for us, Goodman Games now sells it super cheap.
Yes, I'm gonna grab me a Goodman Games copy here shortly. But you've done deities and demigods, gods, demigods, and heroes. A ton of stuff in the Strategic Review and Dragon Magazine. So now you've got another game that's coming out, Gamma World. So let's talk about Gamma World.
Okay, so anime had been out for almost a year, and TSR actually got literally hundreds of letters saying from fans who said, we love Metamorphosis Alpha, but we'd really like a planet-based version of the game. And so, I had been reading a ton of apocalyptic novels in those days, and so it was just natural for me to almost destroy the world with aliens and bacteria and nuclear war, and 300 years later, you play in what's left. And we did the same thing with mutations. We did a whole bunch of new creatures. We played a lot with technology, ancient technology, and it was a big success. And they actually stopped printing MA because they were giving me a better royalty on MA than they gave me Gamma World.
Ouch! A victim of your own success.
Yes. And so they did some modules that were very successful. Kim Eastland, the man just passed away a little while ago. He did some great Gamma World modules. He was a very good writer. And so that came out. That still is at Wizards of the Coast, but the only reason it's still around is because Hollywood keeps teasing Wizards with, we'd like to do a Gamma World movie.
Wow.
So Wizard keeps it around just for that.
Now, Gamma World was one of those that was always on my radar as a kid, but I had intended, and then, as an adult, one of those, I'm going to get a copy of Gamma World one day. I'm going to get a copy of Gamma World one day. And I was kind of surprised when I finally, years after the fact, got a copy of Gamma World. I myself only knew in an ancillary sense people who regularly played Gamma World, just because I was so focused on D&D at the time, that my impression of Gamma World was that this was a real day after tomorrow type thing. Like, 10 years from now there's a nuclear war, and then 10 years after that, Gamma World. But Gamma World really is science fantasy. It's set in the distant future, in the 26th century, right?
It is set in the distant future. We never call it science fantasy. We call it apocalyptic fantasy.
Okay.
Because there's science fantasy stuff out there, and Gamma World was never that. We didn't mix magic in with it. So that's why it's apocalyptic fantasy as opposed to science fantasy.
Okay. Okay. There's an early issue of Dragon. In fact, I think it's so early it's still called The Dragon, that has a great piece of Gamma World fiction in it, and I wish I could remember exactly which issue that was. But it concerns the not so nice adventures of a mutant with powerful psychic abilities, and his adventures across the titular Gamma world.
There we go.
I'm sorry?
There we go.
Yeah, oh yeah. Good stuff. So Gamma World was a hit, Metamorphosis Alpha was a hit. Again, deities and demigods, gods, demigods, and heroes. How did Star Frontiers come into being?
Oh boy.
Uh-oh. Did I have I touched a sore point? Should we move on to later projects?
Well, we can answer any question you have.
Okay.
That won't get me sued into the Stone Age. So, the science fiction was a big deal out there, and Traveler and BattleTech were making big money.
Okay.
And so TSR wanted some of that big money. So they put 8 designers and 4 artists on the creation of Star Frontiers. Never asked me about it at all. They really should have. It's a fun little game, but there are lots of silly things in it, like a bone spear hits better than a laser rifle.
You know, I never picked up on that when I was a kid. I loved Star Frontiers to death. I had my original set my folks got for me for Christmas the year it came out, but I never picked up on the bone spear hitting better than a laser gun.
There was a couple of things like that that just irritated the hell out of me, but you know, I mean, the guys did a pretty good job. I can't complain. I'm a little jealous because naturally it impacted Gamma World sales. But Gamma World is still around and still being sold, and Star Frontiers isn't.
There you go, the time-tested product. I have a couple of questions from watchers. This is from Chris Spiller. Jim, what was the reason Conan Robert E. Howard's material didn't make the transition from gods, demigods, and heroes to deities and demigods?
Oh, well, it was in the outline, but Gary said we did it in gods, demigods, and heroes. We don't need to do it in deities and demigods. Okay. So that was a Gary decision.
All right. And one other question about Gamma World, also from Chris. Loved Gamma World. Did it or you have any influence or input on the development of the old Thundar the Barbarian cartoon?
Oh, that's another sore point. You're hitting all the sore points today.
It's not, that. Hey, Star Frontiers was a boo-boo. I admit that. That's Chris's fault, though. It's Chris Spiller in the chat. So
Thundar, I believe in my heart of hearts that Thundar is a direct ripoff of Gamma World. There were so many features of Thundar the Barbarian that were Gamma Worldian features. You know, from the horses that Thundar rides to the power sword that he's using. It's a fun cartoon, no doubt about it. But it irritated me every time I saw an episode because we should have got money for that and we didn't.
Oh yeah, well, I mean, looking back now, I can absolutely see the two, and I wonder. Pardon me, I'm just. I want to take a look at something because. Thundar and the Dungeons and Dragons cartoon were kind of, let's see, so Thundar was 80 to 81, and the D&D cartoon was, okay, the D&D cartoon was 83 to 85, And it's been stated by several people, and I take it as gospel, that the D&D cartoon was huge. It beat out everybody in its time slot.
It did. Absolutely.
And my thought, again, not knowing what the timelines were, that Ruby Spears took a look at the D&D cartoon and said, hey, let's jump on the next thing. What else do they have that's a game? Well, they got Gamma World. Okay, we'll call it Thundar and make a cartoon about it and get a slice of them. But Thundar preceded the D&D cartoon, but if it hadn't, I could definitely take it as a motivating reason. So we'll leave that for now, since that's a sticky point. I certainly only want to inform and entertain. Don't want to upset the guests.
Yeah, really, you're hitting all my buttons today.
My apologies, but again, that's Chris's fault, not my fault. But so as time went on, and again, there's a lot of water that's gone under the drawbridge, and there's a lot of he said, she said, they said, we said that has gone on about it. So we'll just kind of step over that, unless you don't want to, and go into second edition AD&D. You kind of built a bridge between first and second, working on Greyhawk Adventures for...
that actually was the last AD&D hardball to come
out. Now, at that time, did you have... Did you have some play experience with Gary, or any notes maybe that were the property of TSR, or that he left when he moved on from the company, guiding your design?
Yeah, no, that's a fair question, and the answer is no. We purposely didn't use any notes from Gary, because we didn't want Gary suing TSR for ideas that he came up with.
Sure.
In Greyhawk. I mean, when he sold the company, he sold the existing Greyhawk stuff. So we were able to do a Greyhawk hardbound book and not have Gary's copyrights kick in. But I purposely didn't use any material that I knew from playing in Gary's game. We tried to do all new stuff.
Yeah, it's a good volume, and I've often said there's a lot of people who are sticklers for Greyhawks of different eras. Like some folks, they embrace it all from Supplement 1 Greyhawk all the way to the stuff that came out for 3rd edition. Some folks say no, only 1st and 2nd. Some people say I just like the 2nd edition stuff. But I definitely think, just my opinion as a gamer, I definitely think that your Greyhawk book is, it's canon Greyhawk to me, man.
No, yeah. Thank you very much. There's a fun little story with that too. Do you want to hear it?
Yes, please.
Okay, so I don't remember the year that I wrote that, but what happened was TSR needed cash. We needed an influx of cash pretty quickly, and so they came to me. The bosses, Lorraine and Will Martins, came to me and said, "We need a hardbound book." I said, "Okay, that's fine. We can put one in the schedule. 6 months to write it, 3 months to edit it, and do the art." No. We need the hardbound book written in 3 months and edited in 1 month with the art done. And I said, that's an impossibility to do. And these evil people said to me, well, then we'll have to fire most of our editing and design staff. Well, I couldn't let that happen.
Wow.
I know. So, okay, I said, I'll write it. I'll get it done. So, we're ignoring that phone. So, I started writing, and I got people to help me. I got Bruce Hurd to assign some guys to write sections, but it didn't really get the playtesting that it needed. I mean, I'm really proud of 0 level characters
Mm-hmm.
and the idea of a 0-level character, but it should have been played tested lots more than it was.
Mm.
But anyway, we got it written in 3 months. And I did a great big art order, so we got the art order started while we were designing, which is kind of an unusual thing to do.
Yeah.
And then Jeff Easley did that great cover that just is fantastic. Yeah. And so we were able to get it done in the time frame that my evil managers told me we had to get it done, and it was a huge success. Sold a lot. I'm actually spoiled rotten. I'm used to big successes. Most of my stuff sold really well.
Oh yeah, I mean, I have heard that you were pretty much the top of the top seller at TSR for your tenure.
No, that's not quite true. I mean, Zeb Cook in second edition sold metric tons, and Jeff Grubb with Marvel sold amazing amounts. We really had some great designers. We had a great design and editing department in general. Really fantastic people that were able to just do anything. I sit back still 30 and 40 years later, amazed at what those guys were able to accomplish. And I did my share. That's very true. But those guys had big hits too.
Yeah, and I guess with management pinching pennies and throwing crisis at y'all's feet, you know, it was definitely working under adverse conditions. Yeah.
It wasn't a good environment. It was not a good environment.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's any gamer in our age demo, if you will, who hasn't heard horror stories about that woman who was running TSR at the time.
Yes, really.
And so now this is something I'm not 100% clear on. When did your tenure at TSR conclude? When did you move on?
Yeah, Lorraine ordered me to fire 20 editors and designers, and for 3 months I argued, these are the geese that lay the golden eggs. Mm-hmm. We can't fire them because we need them to write stuff. And she totally ignored me. And finally I said, okay, fine. I'm quitting so that you can use my salary and not fire those 20. Well, unfortunately for them, they fired the 20 anyway, but I had to quit. My sense of ethics would not allow me to fire hardworking people that did nothing wrong but support the company.
Well, of course. I mean, you know, that's absolutely taking the high road, man. I mean, you know, you'd been there for 22 years at that point, and to
22 years. Yeah, I love that company. I thought I'd work there forever, but it didn't happen.
Yeah. When Wizards of the Coast took over a few years later, did Wizards reach out to you and say, you want to do anything, you know, we want you to be a part of this again, or anything like that? Oh, I did it again, didn't I?
Oh, you certainly did. All right, so I can't remember the name of the book. It's at a Gen Con, and Wizards of the Coast put out a book. I think it was called Powers and Perils. I don't remember the name of the role-playing product. Mm-hmm. But at the Wizards table, they put out a role-playing product, and in the middle of the product was 2 pages on how to run AD&D games with this product. And so I had to come up and tell Peter Atkinson, Peter, you have to stop selling this. You didn't get permission to do this. You're in copyright violation. And Peter got all snooty with me and said, you know, what happens if we sell it? And so I got snooty back, and I said, Peter, we will sue you into the Stone Age if you sell this one more day at this convention or anywhere else. And so he had to take it off the shelves. He was very angry with me. And a year and a half later, he bought the company. So that we never got along. He always was sniping at me for one reason or another. And so I did interview twice there, but it was clear that it wouldn't have been healthy for me to sign on with Peter as the boss.
Yeah, I got to tell you, man, you know, not with role playing design. I've been fortunate enough. I worked for Gary just for a little bit before he passed away on the Yigsburg projects. And then I've done a whole bunch of freelance stuff. That's all the role playing writing I've done. But I think regardless of what you do, working with toxic people, man, is not good for your health.
Well, and you know, lots of people love Peter, but I know I irritated him when I told him I'd sue him into the Stone Age. He didn't want to hear that.
Well, you know, you got to shoot.
I know Spellfire irritated him too, so I thought that was funny.
Yeah, two can play at the CCG game.
Yeah, and we played very well. We made millions of dollars with Spellfire. I think it's one of the reasons they bought the company.
Ha! No doubt. So moving on from TSR, and hopefully I won't step in it again by talking about this. Let's talk about post TSR stuff. So you've freelanced an awful lot, and done some things. What are the highlights in the densely packed galaxy of Jim Ward stars?
Well, let's see. I did a lot with Precedence role playing. We did Lara Croft Tomb Raider game.
Mm-hmm.
And Babylon. I didn't design the Tomb Raider game, but I helped with the art and helped with the cards. And Babylon 5, I helped with the art on Babylon 5, the card game. Let's see. I've done pretty much 50 or 60 different things. We had a little company called Fast Forward, and we put out about 25 different products.
Mm-hmm.
And that was fun for a while. That kind of takes us up to me working with a man named Stephen Lee. Stephen Lee's out of Florida. He has a big print company, but he also has a role-playing company called Fireside Creations.
Mm-hmm.
And Stephen Lee came to me with an amazing idea. It was a science fiction story, and the story was huge. The potential for products was amazing. And so we did, I did a role-playing game with him called 77 Lost Worlds. And we've done a ton of products since then. There's lots of support products. And there's like an advanced product called The Blasted Earth. And basically the fun part for me was I didn't want to do dice. I didn't want to roll dice in this game because everybody has games that roll dice.
Sure.
So I begged and pleaded Stefan to let me do a deck of playing cards because everybody has a deck of playing cards. And I could teach you the game in 1 minute. And the game is this. When you want to strike something, you have to draw a heart or a diamond. When you want to duck something, you have to draw a club. And when you want to resist something, you have to draw a spade. Now you know how to play the game. Simple as that.
That is, I think you may have the patent on the simplest role playing game mechanics ever.
There we go. There we go.
There we go.
So we did 77 Lost Worlds. The storyline is excellent. I won't go into it, but it starts on the moon and goes to Earth, and an apocalyptic Earth, and then it goes out to Mars and Jupiter, and then it goes to the 77 worlds. That's how big this thing is. So we have really nice gazetteers for Mars and Jupiter, and we're going to start doing gazetteers for the 77 worlds. The product is huge. It's just so big and wonderful.
Oh, it sounds huge, man.
It's really good. Now here's the fun part. The fun part is I did the game. 4 months later, I call up Stefan. Stefan, this is a wonderful science fiction game. We need a fantasy version. So I did a reverse from what I did with Gary and MA. And so Dragon Scales came out. And in Dragon Scales, it uses the same card system. But in Dragon Scales, if you want to toss a spell, you have to use the scale of a dragon. to toss the spell. And so you spend a great deal of your time finding young dragons and beating them up for their scales. So that's another thing we have lots of product for now. You can go on the firesidecreations.com website and pick up a ton of fun product for both of those. We have Dragon Scale Beginner Set, and we have 77 Lost Worlds Beginner Set. And we haven't done advanced rules for Dragon Scales, but I think it's going to come. Okay. But it's just fun to write those stories. Right this second, I'm writing an 8-module Dragon Scales adventure that takes them all across the planet. Takes them from Concord, which is the magical city that everybody starts in, and we go to all the kingdoms. All the kingdoms are named after colors. And right now I'm on number 2. And the theme of this is an undead war. Basically what's happened is, for some reason that nobody knows about, the undead have risen all over the world. And so everybody's trying to beat back these guys and figure out why it's happening. And so in the first adventure, you come early to Concord. You're just young adventurers, and skeletons start pouring out of the graveyard of the city, and you have to fight your way through them and figure out why the skeletons are animated and attacking everywhere. And so that's the first adventure. And then we go on to the next one, and it's wraiths. Wraiths are rising up in the White Kingdom, and you have to find out why they're rising up and how to fix it. And so I have 8 different adventures like that go to the different kingdoms. So you have the fun of seeing each of the kingdoms and how they're different and what they're like. And I'm really having a blast writing it. The writing's going really fast, I'm happy to say, and I'm enjoying it immensely.
Oh yeah. I mean, you know, when you're working on something you love so much, it hardly seems like work at all, regardless of what you're doing. Now I see here, just for the benefit of our viewers, you guys just you kickstarted this back just a couple of months ago. This went this got funded on Kickstarter.
Yes, sir, it did.
Nice. Very nice. And
Stephen Lee is very supportive. He's a real good designer too, as a matter of fact. He always gives me tons of terrific ideas for all of my products, and he has been a creative force behind every single one. So that it's really nice working with someone who is creative. I'll tell you, it's an unusual experience for me. Normally it's just guys give me money and say, make me something fun. So that's what I do. But Stefan wants to get involved, and he's really good at working with people.
Nice. It's great when you can get kind of a creative feedback loop going, and that's one of the things that, like, I loved, during the few years that I had to freelance for Gary, was, sending him ideas and then immediately getting, feedback from those things, and not just like, oh, just write, here's your word count, just do your stuff. I mean,
Yeah, he was like that. You're right. He was always very talented at getting a lot out of designers and editors.
Yeah, like one of my proudest creations, not to toot my own horn, because we're here for you. Sorry, I forget where my camera's at. We're here for you. Not to toot my own horn, but one of my proudest creations I ever made for Gary was, I was working on a fortress, like not haunted or dungeon or anything, but like manned by guards and everything. And I did the kitchen area and the larder, and I said, okay, if adventurers or thieves or just someone just comes through and starts randomly grabbing bottles of liquor, they're gonna, here's a table, here's like 20 things, and so it was the wandering booze table, and I sent it to Gary, and I had like the mid-range to kind of punish sticky fingered players was vinegar, and I had like 9 through 12 or 9 through 13 or something like that, vinegar, and then in parens next to it, no value. And he said, well, he came back and said, no, good red wine. And he told me, he extolled the virtues of good vinegars made from fine wines, and so at his direction, even if you can't drink it, you can still sell it. So the Wandering Booze table does have vinegar on it, but it does turn a profit if you manage to sell it.
Nice.
And
nice.
that's the kind of thing, you know, to go back to you, to take this back over to you, that's so nice about working with creative people. It's not just like, yeah, you got 20 items on that table, awesome, we'll put it in there, let's go next.
Yeah,
You know, and it sounds to me like with Stephen Lee, you've really struck a rich vein of creativity,
yes, absolutely.
feedback there. Not, of course, that Jim Ward needs other people's creativity, but it never hurts.
It's nice to have it. It builds on each other, is what it does.
It does. It really does. We have another question from Chris, and I want to emphasize that this is coming from Chris, so don't yell at me if this is bad. I won't. Chris says, Jim, did Nick Cole and his compatriots ever make it past the entrance to the Tomb of Horrors successfully?
Oh, Nick Cole. Okay, that's a fun story.
Okay.
Nick Cole is a pretty famous novelist out of California, and he loves role playing, and so he commissioned me to do a role playing game, and that's going to come out. His idea is wonderful. He wants to give the role playing game away free online, so that people will like the role playing game and want to buy his novels.
That's thinking
I think
with the
that's
old bean.
brilliant. I really do. So anyway, we play on Friday afternoons, and so Nick said, Jim, I've never played in the Gary's Tomb of Horrors, and I really want to play in it. And I said, well, you know, I could run you through the game, but I don't own it. So that tricky fellow sent me a copy of Tomb of Horrors. And so we got a group together, and it was kind of funny. I killed the group 2 different times before they ever got in the tomb.
Nice.
So that was pretty funny. And then we went from that to playing to being Galaxy Edge is the books from Jason and Nick, and those are their novels, and they're just very good novels. And so in Galaxy Edge, the main characters are Legionnaires, and they're in power armor, much like Iron Man's armor.
Okay.
And so we decided to run them through Metamorphosis Alpha. And they were Galaxy Edge Legionnaires with all of their Galaxy Edge equipment, and they went in the Starship Ward, and they had a whale of a time there for a while, and then they went to Dragon Scales. They went interdimensional.
Went to the fantasy world. Okay.
Yeah. So the Legionnaires were Dragon Scales. 3 of them got killed off right away, which kind of amazed them. They thought their power armor would do it for them. But now they've gone interdimensional again, and now they're on Gamma Worlds. And
nice.
So in the Gamma World setting with Galaxy Edge Legionnaires, and it's a great deal of fun. They're good role players. I don't kill them very often, and actually, Jim Ward never kills characters. Characters kill characters.
That's great, man. That is great. Now, were you the impetus? I gotta jump way back here to AD&D because you brought up the interdimensional hopping. When I was a kid, and to this day, it's not just when I was a kid, but one of my favorite parts of AD&D, or I should say, 2 of my favorite parts of AD&D, is the Mutants and Magic section in the Dungeon Master's Guide, which has rules for doing Metamorphosis Alpha and Gamma World AD&D crossovers and so on, and and of course the awesomely fun and funny Expedition of the Barrier Peaks. Were you the impetus for the Mutants and Magic section in the Dungeon Master's Guide?
I didn't write it, but Gary and I talked about it a lot before we put it in.
Okay, because that's just like from day one. Like when I got my Dungeon Master's Guide, I was like, "Holy crap, man! oh, we're gonna have some science fiction fun. And then I got a copy of Expedition, and I was like, oh, this is amazing, laser guns and magic swords.
Yeah, it was amazing. It was a great product.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. But so you're doing the Legionnaire or Galaxy's Edge RPG.
Yes.
When will
No, actually, it's called Forgotten Ruins.
Forgotten Ruin? Okay.
Yes. It isn't Galaxy Edge Troops. It's more of a fantasy theme.
Okay.
Because they've been doing science fiction to death, so they thought they might like doing some fantasy stuff.
Okay, I gotcha.
They talked their book publisher into it, and he's very happy with the result. So,
cool.
like I said, they have the role play game. It's in editing right now, and it's going to be given free online, and
Neat.
and actually you can check out my Facebook page, and I'll definitely announce that that's happening. And there's actually a Forgotten Ruins Facebook page that has a ton of art on it that is just very good.
Well, I'm excited about that, man. I'm hyped. I want to see that.
Yeah, you're supposed to be. I love it when a plan comes together.
So you'll be writing the fantasy RPG for them, and I guess you'll go to them a few months later and say, "Okay, we've done the fantasy RPG. Now let's do the science fiction RPG."
Yeah, I would love to do a Galaxy Edge game. Unfortunately for me, half the world wants to do a Galaxy Edge game.
I can imagine.
Yeah, they're getting lots of offers from lots of people. So
I took a gander at it on Amazon, and I'm gonna link this in the chat. Folks really should. These books, man. I don't know how these got under my radar, but these things are huge.
And they have them in audio, and they have them online, and they have a very nice club, a Galaxy Edge club, where you can hear the games that we're running. They do audio of the games, and they're very talented, smart people that are doing it right. And so I like them a lot. They're really friendly, and I've done actually 2 adventures for them for Forgotten Ruins, so there'll be adventures coming out right away.
I am so looking forward to that, man. I'm stoked. I am.
Yeah.
I definitely. Now, is that all new mechanics you've got for
Naturally. Yes, when people want me to do a game, I always try to give them something that hasn't been done before.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, there's new mechanics on it that you use. It's different stuff. Like I did. This is kind of a neat idea too. Switching gears. A man called me up from Madison and says, I'd like you to do a role-playing game, Jim. I said, okay, I can do that. And he said, I want you to do a role-playing game because we're going to turn it into a theme park.
Wow.
Gigantic idea. Oh my goodness. Never been done before. So Giant Lands is the name of the role-playing game. And it has a Facebook page, Giant Lands Facebook page, and we have some art done on it. But the neat part is you're going to be playing your Giant Lands game and having fun with your characters, and then you're going to go to the theme park and be able to play your character in the park. Oh my goodness! I think it's such a huge idea. I'm amazed that nobody's ever done it before.
This, I tell you, I just pulled up the page. With your description, this sounds so much, and I mean this as a positive, this sounds so much like the old Larry Niven book, the Dream Park book, California
sure.
Dream Park. This is something else I'm interested in. This, man, you've just you've hooked me today. I thought we'd just be sitting here BSing, but no, you're selling me on stuff, man.
I can't wait to walk into the Dragon. Actually, it's a wheelchair into the Forgotten the Giant Lands theme park. I can't wait because I'm going to get my own restaurant. I'm going to get my own apartment in the theme park. I'm going to get everything Disney got, and I'm going to get it. So that's just great. And I get a percentage of the take. So someday I'm going to be a millionaire.
Well, man, I absolutely hope so, because I can't think of anybody who deserves it more. You are a guy. You carried that. You, Post Gary, you carried that company on your backbone, man. And
Well, I did for a while, but the just the idea of this theme park is so exciting to me because it hasn't been done before. And also, oh, I forgot to mention this. Giant Lands is a whole new kind of role playing. It's apocalyptic fantasy role playing game. So, for the first time ever, we have the apocalypse. The world gets blown up, but then we have fantasy coming in to save the day. The objective here is in Giant Lands, the world has polluted itself almost to death.
okay,
And Gaia, the goddess of nature, wakes up and is enraged by what she sees. So she destroys mankind. She destroys human civilization, and she brings back the giants, and she brings back the titans, and you play characters that have to solve the ecological problems that were left by the ancestors. So the
okay.
nice theme about your adventures are solving polluted lakes, solving polluted lands, solving radiated lands. Your adventures are bringing back the goodness and health of ecology is your main adventure. So I love the theme, and I think it's very positive, a positive, uplifting theme.
Yeah. So this is this is very du jour. This is very relevant to today's
It sure
the
is. Yeah.
circumstances we're in. And I
Yeah,
mean,
this is Stephen Deinhardt's idea. He's a brilliant creator himself, and he pitched me the idea, and I ran with it, turned it into a game, and so someday that thing's, and it's not going to be today, it's not going to be next year, but I give it a good 25% chance of success, and I'll take that percentage any day.
hey, any gamer can tell you that you absolutely will pick up the dice and roll if you got a shot on a 1d4 of hitting something, right?
Yeah, exactly, exactly.
No gamer alive would say, "Oh, I'm not even going to bother. It's only it's only on a 4 on a d4." Absolutely, you'll do that, and I will
Yeah,
too. That's
there we go.
awesome, man. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Um, but this, yeah, you definitely, you've got a lot of irons in the fire. There's a couple of things to make us swerve for just a minute. There's a couple things I want to ask you, and the only reason that I wanted to bring this up was because you had posted about this on Facebook, and I want to be very careful myself personally in bringing this up, because I think we're all rational adults capable of understanding nuance and caring about more than one thing at a time. But there seems to be a lot of well, no, there doesn't seem to be. I'm not going to couch it. There is a lot of hand wringing going on over role playing games these days that echoes a lot of the troubles that were started by pat pulling and so on, but the kind of moral busybodies seem to be pushing in a different direction. But I'm of the opinion that it's the same. It's the same mentality. It's just wrapped up in a whole new label. If you kind of get what I'm talking about there,
I
you
know
know.
exactly what you're talking about. Are you sure you want to bring this up?
Uh, Not
I mean,
live.
I'm all for it.
um, you know
You'll
what?
get
I would.
1,000. You'll get 1,000 irritated people, just like I did.
Um,
I brought it up on Facebook. 1,500 comments about it.
do it, Jim. Go for it. I'm a free
Okay, here we
speech
go.
advocate. Do it.
So, good old Wizards of the Coast, in their brains, have decided that orcs and drow are races, and so to make them all evil is a racist comment, is a racist action. So here's the deal, and this is the complete background. When Gary Gygax made this game, he subtly wanted good to triumph over evil. And so the game is subtly designed so that people want to be good and they want to beat the bad guys. All right? So now Wizards comes along, and in their silly leftist treatments have decided, oh no, orcs aren't evil. Oh no, drow aren't evil. You can't have an evil race. Well, that completely undoes what Gary wanted to do. So here's what happens. You go up to a Wizards of the Coast orc, and, well, is he evil or is he not evil? Should I shake his hand or shall I fight him? And then he chops your head off. Because he's evil. I object strenuously to making them not evil. Because, for one thing, I think it cuts down on the role-playing. Mm-hmm. For another thing, it cuts down on Gary's effort for good to triumph over evil. You have to have bad guys. You have to have guys that you want to defeat. And third thing is, where does it stop? Okay? So they've made orcs and drow evil. Or they made orcs and drow not evil anymore. Are demons going to be not evil anymore? Are vampires going to be not evil anymore? I mean, vampires are a race. Where does it stop? And I just hate the direction it's taken. And I voiced that on my Facebook page. And 8 billion trolls came out and said how stupid and old-fashioned I was. The whole concept irritates me because it isn't, and I know Gary, it wasn't what Gary wanted. Gary wanted good to conquer evil. Well, if you strip away evil, how can that happen?
Exactly. And I mean, the Bowdlerization of AD&D through the years has only gotten worse. And I never, never give the moral busybodies an inch, even if you think your heart's in the right place. That's kind of my philosophy on the matter. And I feel like, I've said it myself, or rather I've seen it said, and I believe it myself. If the first thing that a person thinks when they see an orc is, that's supposed to be a black person, the person who described the orc isn't the racist. It's the person who thinks that orcs are supposed to be black people.
Yeah.
I mean,
drow is supposed to be black people.
Or you can't make the bad guys black people and they're always evil. Drow are not African Americans. Drow.
Yeah, right. I mean, they're from a Germanic legend. So I mean, and they were black with white hair in the legend.
Yeah.
So what changed the legend because people, don't like to refer to black people as anything? I mean, it's just wrong. It changes the spirit of the game, and I don't mind rules changes that help the game grow and help the game be more fun and easier to understand. I mean, I helped with second edition so that it would be easier to understand. But what they're doing right now does not make the game easier to understand. I think it cheapens the game and the role playability, and that irritates me.
No, I'm with you 100%, and it's blown up, and it goes back. Like, I saw, this has been years ago. This has been probably in excess of 15 years ago, when the home releases of the Lord of the Rings movies were getting popular. There were one or two very fringe editorials, and it wasn't even in U.S. papers. They were in papers in the U.K. By people who said, well, J.R.R. Tolkien must have been a racist. This is racist and this is classist, etc., etc. And if you go, one of the finest things that J.R.R. Tolkien ever wrote was a letter in response to a German editor in 1936 who asked Tolkien, hey, you aren't Jewish, are you?
Oh, jeez.
And J.R.R. Tolkien's response was, unfortunately, no, I'm not. I wish I was, because Jewish people are, I have no one of Jewish extraction in my family, and I'm greatly disappointed by that fact. Now, if you're asking me if, no, the person asked him if he was Aryan. And of course, J.R.R. Tolkien being a genius of literature and history, and to a degree, anthropology of European peoples, Tolkien's response was, I'm not from India or Iran, so no, I'm not Aryan. If you're asking me if I'm Jewish, unfortunately, I don't have any of that favored race in my family's background. But one thing I can tell you, the world is rapidly coming to a place where German isn't going to be that much cared for. So, this idea that Tolkien was making veiled racist references, that post that one letter, find an image of that letter and post it in response and walk away because you won that argument. So now I think the same mindset has grown stronger, and so they're turning to Gary's work instead. Like, hey, this is popular. We can tear this down a lot easier than, we can tear down the works of J.R.R. Tolkien.
Yeah, I quite agree. There's a lot of efforts to shoot Gary down and Gary's design down, and I'm never going to let that happen. I'll tell you, Luke Gygax working hard to keep Gary's memory alive. Ernie Gygax, really good gamer, really good representative of D&D. They're good men, and they're doing what they're supposed to do. Yeah. All Gary wanted to do was to make a fun game. That's all he wanted. He didn't have a side agenda. He didn't even expect to get rich, and he did. So it's just crazy what people will do.
Yeah, I mean, Gary told me, I was fortunate enough, even before I started working for him, I did like a 90-minute interview with him. I still have the audio of it, but Gary told me when they created Dungeons and Dragons, when they printed up those wood grain box sets, they made like 1,500 of them, and he said, and we thought that was it. That was all the stock we'd ever need, that we would never, we would wind up at some point years down the road and we'd still have a few of these knocking around. They introduced it in January of 1974, and you guys were sold out by April.
Yep.
And
for $10 a box.
yeah. You go and do the math. That's like plunking down like $90 for a role playing game today.
Yeah.
It's crazy. So yeah, I mean, like you say, he wasn't like, aha, I've created the next greatest thing in the world, and it will it will dominate pop culture, television, movies, comics, video games, everything will spring forth from this. He was like, here's a fun fantasy war game. You can run one person instead of an army. You can get better at what you do. Yeah, I'm gonna borrow from Tolkien, from Moorcock, from King Arthur, legend. From all these disparate sources, and it's gonna be fun. And that was the end of it. Couple of comments from our viewers here. The people who think Gary made the Drow and Orcs as stand-ins for black people have no idea that he wrote the evil Scarlet Brotherhood as racial supremacists. They're idiots.
There we go. That person is correct.
And Gitano says, D&D is going back to the basements. Players being misunderstood, bullied, and shamed. It seems like old times. And unfortunately, I think there may be some... hopefully he's wrong. Hopefully we're going to be laughing at you in a few months, Gitano, and people find something else to tilt at, and we can go back to playing. But
yeah, come on. There's the presidential election in a few months.
Oh no, please no. Let's not even. That's. Oh my gosh, that's a whole nother can of worms, bucket of fish, and we would be here until the Facebook servers burned down talking about that one. But
if they don't close you out.
If they don't close me out, yeah. I got to watch my P's and Q's. But Jim, it has been an absolute gas having you on. Would you please come back for another one? I'm
capable of doing that, yes.
Thank you.
I need you to hook this into my Facebook page, please.
I will absolutely. Once it usually takes when we're done. it takes Facebook a few minutes to process the video. I guess I got to make sure I don't have any nudity in it or something. I don't know. And then I will share the Facebook link to your page, and I absolutely appreciate it. I'm so hyped for Giant Lands, for
Galaxy's Edge.
Yeah.
For the theme park is going to be wonderful.
Yeah,
I really hope that happens.
I do too, man. For you, for all of us who enjoy stuff like that, and I hope that you have a case lot of Deities and Demigods books to slowly trickle out on eBay to make pizza money with.
I only have two. Only have two, and I'm not selling them.
You're not selling. Well, the next GaryCon, when Andromeda Strain is over, I got to bring my copy of DDG up and have you autograph it for me.
Please do that one. And Gods, Demigods, and Heroes, I'll be happy to autograph them.
Yes, I got Rob's autograph on Gods, Demigods, and Heroes. I bought this.
Nice.
I bought this at the first time I met Gary in person was at a one-off con called Milwaukee Game Fest. He and Rob were there. I saw this at a vendor, and I bought it. I think this now goes for about $100 on eBay. I think I paid about 25 or 30 for it.
Sure.
Back in 2004, and Rob signed it for me, and Gary and Dave Arneson signed all my other OD&D books. So I got to get you. I got to get Jim Ward's signature on some of this too.
I'll be happy to do that. I love giving autographs. Man,
and I love getting them from you guys. So again, I thank you so much for today. Thank you. And I know you've been staring at the side of my head, but you're on this monitor and my camera's over here. So I'd much rather look at you than stare at a glass eye. So
it's not a problem.
So have a wonderful day, and we're going to have you back on very soon. So don't go, phew, thank God I'm done with that Bill Sylvie lunatic, because I'll drag you back.
You mean there's more questions?
Oh yeah, I haven't seen you get completely angry at all yet. I'm gonna go ask Paul Stormberg what all the controversial Jim Ward topics are to ask.
Oh, there we go.
Have a great day, Jim, and thank you again.
All right. You too.
All right. Be well.
Bye.
And I don't know. Am I out? I don't know if you guys can still hear me. Let me pull up. Well, I think you guys can still hear me. That was the great and mighty Jim Ward, everyone. Thanks for watching today. Thanks for all your great questions. I'm gonna send this link over to Jim's Facebook page as soon as Facebook is done processing the video. Share it far and wide. Share it with your friends, and have a wonderful day. We'll be back tomorrow. I'll try and talk more about D&D stuff than staring at my hands and feet and looking around the room like a deranged parakeet, talking about Facebook and YouTube video metrics. Okay? All right. You guys have a wonderful afternoon, and I will talk to you later.